Welcome back to the Quiet on Set podcast. I'm Ewan Graf, and as always, I'm joined by Lachlan Thiele.
On episode 176, trailers and sequels, just another day in the film industry news cycle.
We watched all of Villeneuve's movies and Adam Sandler's new Netflix film with a talking spider. Compared to the spiders, I guess, in anime, there's a bit of a through line there as well. We watched that. We'll talk about that. Then I watched Damsel, Shogun, The Gentleman series, Ricky Stanicky, and more, but more on those in what we've been watching.
Finally, today, we're covering a film that we watched many months ago, and finally it's released almost everywhere, so almost everyone can see it and make their own opinion on the film. But today we're going to be talking about Kore-eda's Monster.
I can't wait. It's been 9 months since we last talked about it, and there was a review for it up on the channel already right after us seeing it. So we teased that we're going to talk spoilers about this soon, and then it took only 9 months more for it to, I guess, come out on digital, so everyone can hopefully catch up with it now. But let's cue up that intro and get into the show. We are professional.
This is a professional podcast.
Yes. Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. Hello there. Which actually,
Did you
this
get
is gonna
me a
be
hat
a
as
bit,
well?
Yes.
So I've got Dune Cam. It's just a camera with my Dune steelbook.
Lachlan, it's Oscar Night Eve, I guess,
Eve.
or whatever you would call it. We're recording this before the Oscars happened, so whatever we say now is totally not doctored and edited to make us look smarter. So it's great that Barbie, Oppenheimer, Killers of the Flower Moon, Maestro won Best Picture. Who would have expected that?
Who would have thought that?
Yeah, I know. But after they had a bit of a drama, I don't know if you saw this, but a couple of the the distributors got mad that at the collective dinner lunch thing when everyone who gets nominated gets invited for the Oscars, there was also a dog attending, and he got a lot of attention, and the distributors didn't like that, so they tried to get Messi, the dog from Anatomy of a Fall, uninvited from the Oscars, which is it's just crazy, man, right?
Bastards.
Why?
I'm not
Why?
watching the Oscars now. Fuck that.
No, I'm actually why I wasn't anyways gonna watch them, but now I got a reason. Although he is invited back in, but we're just gonna.
Oh no, I'm gonna watch it now then. Okay, cool. That's cool.
Never mind. I guess he's down to watch it. But yeah, they happen tonight. We'll talk about them, I guess, next week when it's already old news again. But it feels fairly predictable of what is going to take home a lot of prizes, which is going to be Oppenheimer. So it's not as exciting this year. It feels like it would have been very exciting if Dune had released last year and we had that like huge tech matchup between those two. But yeah, it is what it is. We do have a couple trailers for some new films. An animated one called The Wild Robot that's out on September 20th. Lachlan, I thought this just kind of looks like a light version on The Iron Giant and just a mashup of we just need something this year from the studio, which who even did this? I forget who the studio is that did this. It's DreamWorks. Last year they did like that Ruby Gillman Teenage Kraken movie that completely flopped at the box office, and feels like they want to make a yearly ceremony out of that. Because I don't know if there's any urgency to go see this one. Like it's not a sequel to what seems like Disney is doing with Inside Out and yet another Frozen film and another Toy Story film. They can't stop on those, but if you want to make something like new and original, but it's not original in the slightest, then I feel like there's not going to be any interest for it. And Lachlan, what do you feel? Are you gonna watch this one, or are you gonna skip it?
Look, I have a little bit of interest in it, mainly because the writer is the same writer as Lilo and Stitch, How to Train Your Dragon, Mulan. He's got a story credit for The Lion King, so he's got some history behind him.
Mm-hmm.
I would be excited to see how it goes, as this is obviously his first directing debut, because I can't see anything on his IMDb as director. Hang on a second.
Yeah.
No, here we go.
I mean, it's often for animation directors
Lilo
that
and
they've
Stitch,
done a lot of work.
How to Train Your Dragon, The Croods, The Call of the Wild. Okay, cool. No worries. So, not a great live action guy, but likes his animated stuff. I could see this being quite successful. I'm not super in the now this looks trash boat, but I'll see how the early reviews go. I'm hoping. I mean, Iron Giant. I love the idea of an inanimate object having feelings. I love Big Hero 6. I like The Iron Giant. I like that kind of story, so we'll see.
Yeah, I'm not per se saying it looks shit. It just looks like it's going to be another box office bomb. I don't think it looks bad. It's just like, I feel like this movie is not going to hit at the box office. I don't see the similar pull to like Elemental that is able to like recoup. And yeah, there's kind of the trajectory that DreamWorks is on. Is Kung Fu Panda also DreamWorks? It is, right?
Yep.
Or am I? And yeah, I can't see that one. I'll get into that, I guess, in what we've been watching, but I can't see that one doing too well, apart from, I guess, just like, hey, it's for kids and that's why it's doing well, but it's not a good movie. Sing Sing, which is I guess going to be another Oscar push for Colman Domingo. He did get nominated for his role in Rustin this year. A lot of people have been saying that this is the actual role that could get him a win. He is that great in this A24 movie. And it has me really excited from just the rave that it got from the premiere at TIFF, I believe. So I'm really keen, but the trailer didn't give me like as much to really be hyped about. Lachlan, how did you feel? Are you interested, or is it more from the reviews that it's gotten so far?
Well, I actually didn't know it was getting positive reviews. This is the first I've seen of it, and I am quite engaged. I think this is going to be a really, really good story, especially with the sort of juxtapositioning of men in prison and the glamorous world of theatre. So I would be quite interested to see it. And also I'm enjoying the limelight that Colman Domingo's getting. He's done a lot of smaller roles in other films. And finally seeing him get some bigger leads is super exciting because he's very talented. And all of the smaller stuff I've seen, I've never really had an issue with any of the performances. I always thought it was like solid. He gives his all, and hopefully he gives his all in this and gets something quite deserving.
If this were any other studio than A24, I'd assume that it is likely to get pushed back from its current July release date. But I feel like A24 is a bit more confident in not placing all of their movies at the same time, because like by the way that they've been growing, they are actually like a really big studio now. They put out a lot of movies.
Huge. Yeah, they do.
Like by the sheer amount of it and the quality, it feels like they're bigger than Sony in the amount of stuff that they publish. But Sony also has a lot of production things, so it probably isn't. It just kind of feels that way. So yeah, even another early, performance push, because it feels like, especially for the performance awards, that is still kind of settled into later in the year when we see those runs that a lot of people go on. You see it with other films like Past Lives that premiere earlier and still are able to get into Best Picture. You don't really see it with performances, but yeah, hopefully it is as great as everyone has been saying it is, and I can't wait for it to come out. We don't have to wait that much longer for Late Night with the Devil, which our producer Kevin has seen, and he's talked very positively about when we covered the Ghent Film Festival last year. Dude, it's just the tone of this trailer is incredibly intriguing. I'm very keen for Late Night with the Devil. Feel like you're gonna be on the same page with me here, or what did you feel watching the trailer?
100%. I'm not a big spooky horror guy, but there's just something fun about this trailer that I was excited for. Something kind of unique. So no, I'm keen. I'll watch this.
And again, we don't have to wait for it that long if you're in the States. I guess for us, it's I already said this, I think, when we covered it last year. It's very unlikely that a movie like this is getting a theatrical release, at least in Europe or in Switzerland here. So I don't know how much longer I have to wait, but it is out on March 22nd, and my birthday is on the 21st, so it would be a nice gift if you release this on VOD, maybe early April. It's unlikely, but hopefully we get to talk about this sooner than later. And then Inside Out is a fun movie. Maybe I don't love it as much as some other people do, but the sequel is coming out on June 14th, but this one has hockey in it. And that's really manipulative, because if you've been paying attention to whatever is on my cap this week, it's gone, but usually it's a hockey team. So this could be very fun. We do get a wider cast apart from the teaser that we got a couple of weeks ago. We are introduced to a couple more feelings, notably maybe Envy here, who's played by Ayo Edebiri, who we are very familiar with on this podcast. Lachlan, you keen to revisit the inside world of Riley's head, or you down to skip out on this one? Pixar's.
You say revisit as if I've seen the first one.
You've seen the first one. You haven't seen Coco. You can't fuck with me. You've seen Inside Out.
Hang on, yeah.
You have seen Inside Out. You haven't seen Coco.
Which one's Inside Out's the feelings one. Yeah. No. I got this.
He still hasn't seen Coco. Yeah.
You're saying that as if I haven't seen Coco.
But you haven't seen Coco.
Yeah, I know I haven't seen Coco, but I don't give a fuck about Inside Out, so no.
Yeah, don't care for it. He doesn't like hockey. So fuck. 2 misses, 2 X's from him.
Hey, wait, whoa! I don't hate hockey.
Okay. But
I've watched hockey games in the past.
Okay, like outside hockey or inside hockey?
That's like you. Hockey? Okay, so that's like you saying, you hate AFL, Australian football.
Okay, I don't want to comment on this. Because I'm a bit of a hater on other sports, to be honest. But I haven't watched the AFL. But I like basketball. That's another one that I like.
Incredible.
Yeah. I feel like we got to move on.
Someone else has played. Sorry.
Yeah, I love the big guys. I mean, there was recently someone who entered the NHL. Who's like 6'5", and he has 6'6", and he's been picking fights with literally everyone on like in every game, and that's kind of allowed in the game. So it's been interesting to see him enter the game. But that's totally off note. I might even cut this out. But
cool.
South by Southwest has started. A couple of films premiered that we're gonna get sooner than later. South by Southwest is often a festival that premieres films that do have a spring release date. So it's mainly I guess interesting to get a bit of hype. The Fallout series is going to premiere a couple of episodes there. A lot of shows are premiering some of their stuff there, and Roadhouse also had its premiere and actually got some pretty good early reviews coming out of it, and that's I think coming out start of April, and we'll be covering that on the show when it does. But we aren't attending, obviously. I do have a couple of screeners that I might check out for some of the smaller titles, but we can always direct you into direction of Intercut podcast. They always have great coverage from all of the American festivals. Dune 2 already surpasses the entire box office run of the first Dune in its second weekend. Now, if you remember correctly, then I guess there's a bit of a caveat there. Dune 1 didn't bomb, or Dune 2 isn't like doing incredibly well. It's still doing very well, don't get me wrong. It's the most successful movie of 2024 so far. But Dune had that hybrid release where you didn't need to go to the theater to see it. It was a day and date release on HBO Max or Alexander, or I don't know who they'll change the name to next. We never know with Warner Brothers. Lachlan, do you feel like it's going to have a longer hold as well? People holding out to go in that premium experience of IMAX?
Well, I have not yet seen it a second time, but I do plan on seeing it this week a second time. So, yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I've already seen it a second time by now in IMAX, not in a true IMAX format, a bit of a smaller one that most places get, but it's the best one in my area that I can get. And yeah, it was great, especially the sound. I feel like in IMAX theaters are like way more pronounced, so it feels like everything is kind of when he rides the sandworm, it's like damn, okay, that's a great scene with like good audio. Something I'm the most excited about, it's already my most anticipated film of next year for 2025, is Final Destination 6, which has the, I guess, tacked on title of Bloodlines, has started filming, and I'm very excited. It also has, weirdly enough, set an IMAX release date as well, so it's going to be on IMAX theaters. I'm very excited. This is it's a guilty pleasure franchise of mine. The comments that the filmmakers have made about the franchise, that they're like trying to take it into a different direction, is I don't know if it's worrisome, but it has me on edge because I hold this franchise dear to my heart. It's not always great, but I feel like it's always fun. And I hope that they don't go like, I don't know, like super meta, because the last one came out in 2011, so they kind of weren't a part of like the whole Deadpoolization of it all. It was even before like Marvel was really big. So I hope that they are not really going into the Scream direction of horror, but staying in their own lane. And yeah, I'm very excited for Final Destination 6. Avatar: The Last Airbender has been renewed for another 2 seasons. Lachlan, do you think that they'll do three seasons, basically doing a 1-to-1 what they did with the animated shows, or do you think they'll stretch it a bit thinner with the live action?
Honestly, I wish they would do 4 since they're stripping it down quite a bit just to give a bit more time to develop these characters and do some more storylines. But from the announcement that I saw, it looks like they're doing a straight copy and paste of what the animated show did. We'll see.
We'll see. The first one wasn't a knockout hit by any means, but I feel like it was good enough to warrant another 2 seasons. So yeah, hopefully they can nail it now that it's secured that they get to do the second 2, because like then you don't have to plan ahead for the 1 season to get as much in as you can. And hopefully that gives them enough security to actually plan out hopefully like the best story that they can tell. And it's also great that hopefully they maybe they can shoot it back to back so they don't have to be concerned as much with time skips. There's a lot of benefits. Downside is that the kids don't age up and maybe get better at acting. It's the biggest issue, but hey, it is what it is. But if you think we are doing great acting here on the show, then maybe consider leaving us a rating on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts. Always helps to get the show out there and gets us more screeners for places like South by Southwest, because they go check on like Spotify. Hey, how many ratings do they have? And do people leave less than 5 stars on this? Ooh, what's wrong with this show? So definitely leave those 5-star reviews. It helps. And subscribe if you're watching on YouTube and leave a like. And yeah, if you want to support us by watching the films, if you haven't seen Monster yet and you're about to pause this podcast so you can enjoy our spoiler review of it, then there's an Amazon link that you can use if you want to rent or buy the film yourself, and we get a bit of a kickback. It's very much appreciated. But yeah, that's enough of the shilling. Let's get back to some movies that we watched and yeah, what we've been watching this week. Lachlan, it's been a busy week with Villeneuve. We just recorded our bracket, which should be out later this week. Fingers crossed I can get that edit done in time for you guys. A lot of discussions to be had about the best films that Villeneuve has made so far. I don't know if you want to tease or what you want to share about your first time watches of some of his films.
Yeah, so I rewatched Prisoners. I've seen it now maybe 4 times and absolutely adored it. But Polytechnic, Enemy, and Maelstrom are 3 of his films that I have not had the privilege of watching yet, and had finally had the time to sit down so we could watch it for it. And I have to say, his filmography is stacked with absolute banger after banger, and I don't think there's a single film that is inherently bad or super, I guess, it's just they're not terrible. I say it in the episode, but you know, we did Ridley Scott previously. He's got spectacular films, Blade Runner, Alien, Gladiator, but then he's got some absolute terrible pieces of trash films that sort of came out 1 or 2 years after each other with like Kingdom of Heaven. But for me, they were quite enjoyable, but you can hear more about it on the review. And I watched Spaceman. Spaceman was interesting. What did I call it? I call it a Euro space punk wet dream, I guess. If you want the visual style of that, it's spectacular. If you're looking for something of substance though and something to chew on, find something else. This ain't it, but it is kind of worth your time in a way. Yeah. Just there's not really much to do other than just watch it. But hey, I gave it 3 stars. Pretty positive. That's all I watched.
Same for me with Spaceman. I think I was hoping for a bit more. We do have a bit of a non-spoiler review that should be out on the channel soon, where Kev also talked a bit about it. I'm making my way through the novel, and I feel like the novel gets to expand in a lot of places where it's just hard to do it in movie form. I also think that Adam Sandler is not the right person for this role, if I'm being honest. And yeah, Carey Mulligan is fine in it. I think Paul Dano is also like good for this type of weird oddball role, although I would love to see him in different roles than like that prisoner archetype that he's been typecast to do over and over again. Although he does say that he kind of enjoys doing that. I think in in Spaceman interviews, he was saying that he kind of likes to, because he's kind of weird himself. He's a bit of a nerd, so he kind of likes to play that in that ballpark. But I don't know. I'd like to see him do a bit of different things here. But yeah, Spaceman, worth your time. It's also Netflix, easily accessible. There's a couple more titles that came out on Netflix this week, namely the biggest one probably being another Millie Bobby Brown led and produced, because she is a producer now. She's producing for her movies, like the Enola Holmes films she's also done. Damsel is uniquely bad. It's just like it's such a bland story that you tell of like blatantly we want to make a damsel not the damsel but the action hero. It's like so on the nose, but there's nothing of substance here for the character, for the action. It looks horrible in the VFX wise, and the background and all of it just horribly green screened. And they have a dragon in this film, which is the main basically like antagonist, and the size of this dragon seems to change again and again. It's just like something that they don't get right. And yeah, I found it really bad. But she hasn't really done anything, if I'm being honest, good outside of Stranger Things. And even in Stranger Things, she worked really well as this like odd kid as 11. And as the seasons have gone by, I don't know if like she has really grown with the rest of the cast. So yeah, disappointment. Lachlan, you really like Guy Ritchie, and I'm happy to say that The Gentleman, I found The Gentleman an improvement over the movie from back in 2020. I actually liked it quite a bit more. His comedic style works well with Theo James, with characters that don't have any depth, right? You're not questioning what are their motives, what are they doing. They're just all in service of like being this gentleman figure, and in service of the crime spectacle. There's no substance, no depth in The Gentleman, but it's a lot of fun. And yeah, I had a good time with it. That's the whole series is, as always, straight to binge on Netflix. I think it's an 8-episode series. And yeah, I can recommend it. And then last week I already talked about Shogun, and I said like it would be hype if it had a second season. So thing is, it's a limited series, and it's all unlikely to get a second season, which they've already confirmed. And they sent me another 2 episodes. I thought I had seen all of it, but I hadn't. So that was a big oopsie on my end. I'm not allowed to talk about the final last episodes anyway, so I guess I did fine on my end. But Shogun, it's gonna premiere until like the end of April for the next like 9 or 8 for the next 2 months, and I think it is the show to watch. As Succession and Barry have ended, we're getting The Bear later in the year. This is the show to watch week by week. I think it's stunning, very much worth your time. So yeah, Shogun, big thumbs up from me. Prime had Ricky Stanicky, a comedy that we don't really get as much nowadays anymore, with like a silly escalation of lies essentially being at the center of it all. I found it entertaining enough for my time, and yeah, although it is oddly similar to Vacation Friends, where there's also John Cena, who's the crazy guy, and he basically does that same role here again, in a way. So yeah, I don't know. They just kind of typecast John Cena, which is a crazy thing for like a wrestler turned actor. But he has more depth, and I hear that Peacemaker is gonna the second season of it is gonna start shooting in summer. I'm looking forward to that. I think that first season was really solid. 2 animated films quickly. They're both trash. Kung Fu Panda 4, by far the worst one of the series. Just no reason for it to exist other than to capitalize on a property. It almost feels like they have to renew the copyright, which they don't, but it feels like that we just need an obligatory sequel to this. There's Aquafina in it. She's also one of the worst parts about it. I really hate that she's being cast in so many animated films, because she has a distinct voice, and they cast her for the distinct voice and not the characters that she plays. And it's just a bit annoying to me. Megamind and the Doom Syndicate, I mean, looked horrible. It is horrible. Let's just move on from that. I watched the Code 8 films. There was a new one that dropped on Netflix. Decently worthwhile action, sci-fi. The first one was produced on a really low budget. The second one gets to go bigger, but it doesn't go bigger in a narrative sense, but just like they get to do more effect stuff, which is exciting, I guess, if you're excited about the effects. But story-wise, it's a lesser one than the first one. And then yeah, I rewatched Dune on IMAX, and I'm gonna save you my rant because I did it not on air with Kevin. for like an hour, because I went over all of the different screens that have IMAX formats. And let's just say mine was not as tall as maybe the movie was made for. Like, I don't know if you experienced this, but in scope, the way that they show it in most normal theaters that are on IMAX, it was really close. And there's a lot of close-ups in the film, and they just completely cut off the faces. I watched it in IMAX, and it almost still felt like there was not enough space for faces in it. So that was a bit disappointing. But other than that, I ranked up my 4.5 star rating of Dune 2 to a 5. So nice. Yeah. But that's all the stuff that I've watched. Taking a breather, let's get to Monster from Hirokazu Kore-eda.
A mother demands answers from her son's teacher when her son begins acting strangely.
Monster is an interesting title for this film, because for me it wasn't really clear what it was trying to make the point towards, like, who is the monster in this movie. It feels more like a way different movie than you end up getting. You don't expect that you get a 3 different perspectives told from a mother, a teacher, and a son, and maybe a tiny glimpse into the principal as well. You don't expect to get that from a movie titled Monster, but yeah, hopefully it finds its audience outside of the people who are seeking, I guess, another Godzilla film. Hirokazu Kore-eda definitely has something different to offer with a directing gig, not a writing gig. Usually he's a writer-director. Here he just adapts a screenplay for the silver screen. The film is out now digitally, and you can use our link below to rent or buy it right now. It's been received very positively on Letterboxd. I was actually surprised that it's in the top 50. That's in the top 150 on Letterboxd. It's currently at a 4.3 and sits at spot number 143 of all time. A bit of a surprise there. On IMDb, it's a 7.9, and on Metacritic, an 81. And it comes in at a runtime of 125 minutes. It had its premiere at the Gun Film Festival. That's where we caught it. I think it was our 3rd film that we caught at the festival. And yeah, very exciting to revisit this one. We already did have a review up for it when we were in Gun. And finally, 9 months later, we get to talk spoilers for this film. So that's your spoiler warning. If you haven't seen Monster yet, we're going to get into the plot points. And yeah, Lachlan, revisiting this one 9 months later, did it add something to it, knowing where these perspectives will end up? Was it richer on the rewatch, or yeah, did it not add anything to your experience?
It's funny because when I first watched it back in Cannes, it was a bit of a mixed bag for me. I have only seen 2 of his films for Kore-eda. I have seen Monster and I've seen Shoplifters. Those are the 2. You are more knowledgeable on his filmography. You hold him in quite a high regard. I do. I think you said he's one of your favorite filmmakers.
Yeah. I've only seen 6 of his films, to be fair, myself, and he has a couple more for me to watch. But I think Shoplifters is close to a masterpiece. I think Broker was really good. Haven't you seen Broker as well? I thought you've seen Broker as well.
Is Broker him as well? Oh, okay. Yeah, cool, sick. Anyway, seen 3 of his films, but you have seen double that of me. So
sure, yeah.
For me, this is an interesting one because when I was reading up on Monster all these months later, a lot of people talked about how this was a massive departure from his usual narrative of family, yada yada yada. And I found that quite interesting because I don't have that perspective. I'm ultimately looking at this film without knowing his filmography ultimately, and that's interesting because I don't hold him in this sort of, like, Broker and Shoplifters are fantastic, but here's the thing, I haven't seen the rest of his filmography, which means I don't hold him in this high regard. I think those 2 films are fantastic, and I think he's a great storyteller, but if I'm going just off of those 2 other films, then I don't think that's ultimately fair. So for me, the one thing that this film does better than any other film that I've watched recently, and it was really great rewatching this, is still showing the strengths of this filmmaker. It might also say like he overshot the idea a little bit of what the film was about. That's what I said on the original review. Like you know, it's a bit
the cookie.
mixed, but
you had an analogy with cookies. I think I remember.
On this rewatch, I'm actually okay with the narrative. Funnily enough, it's a technical feat. It shines. It's complemented by this really great performance by the mother and the son. You get this fantastic technical like ability with the camera work and with the blocking, with the direction. I feel like this film excels with visual storytelling. I feel like this film ultimately is a great case of cinematography and a great showcase of how camera movement should be done when it's prompted. Like this camera, like cinematography of this film is fantastic, especially on this rewatch. I was really absorbed into that. But for me, this second rewatching is better than the first.
I agree with you. I stayed, like, rating wise, I stayed the same on my rewatches. I didn't move it up or down. Although I did like it more on the rewatch. On my first watch, I was just kind of thinking, I think we discussed this. We were talking about, because you were like a 3.5 and I was at a 4. And I think you asked me if, because we shared the same issues with the story, if my rating is higher just because I hold him in such a high regard. And I feel like on my rewatch, he has earned actually solidifying the rating that I gave it, because I do see the shortcomings of maybe overdoing certain bits, but it worked better for me on the rewatch because the ellipses that are in between the perspectives, where we in other sort of stories that are lesser than this, that do different perspectives, you do get to see a whole different side play it out, but he actually cuts it out. He just hints at it, and there's a lot of like skips in time that require you to pay a lot of attention to what the intentions were of each of the characters going in. And on my first watch, I found myself way more being attached to being on a character's journey as we went through their perspectives. And on my rewatch, I was more focused on the whole picture and seeing it from the get-go because I was already familiar with it. And I feel like it added a lot to it. Like that whole experience really added a lot to it. And it works well in those thrilling aspects of like where you're wondering what happens, but it also really works well on a character level. And that's like something where he's always great at. And like not being a big departure from maybe his other works, he is doing a lot of family stuff, but also like reincarnation is always like a theme in his films as well. And they do have those moments, right, with the father that's passed away, when they talk about like what his reincarnated being would be, and the mother wants it to be a horse, and I think he's talking about something, I forget what he says. And it basically is like his own sadness reflected in it when he's like wondering about what he will be reincarnated by. And the mother says basically, no, you're living now, you're in the now. And he's so caught up with where this movie ultimately leads to, which is like, I feel like, I mean, it is in a sense a bit of a queer movie, right? Towards the end of it, that's like the theme. And I didn't find that was present on my first watch. And on my rewatch, it was way more apparent that this kid is struggling with something else than being excluded for liking or for hanging out with the weird kid, because there's an attraction more to it. And I just found it really beautiful on the rewatch. Like you said, the cinematography really stands out. He knows how to do his blocking, how to do his staging, how to do the framing. That complements the perspectives as well. Like when you see, for example, the little scene in the bathroom where what's his name? Where not Hori, where Yori gets locked in, and you see it from the perspective of the teacher first, and then from the perspective of the kid. And that scene very easily could be like very much just, it needs to be perfectly timed, and it feels like Charlie Chaplin just executing it perfectly, that like, ooh, by all of this circumstance it ends up playing out this way. But it felt a bit like that on my first watch. On my rewatch, it felt way more natural, which I can say about the whole film. It did really flow very nicely.
You talk about the queer aspect of this film, which you say you weren't really focused on the first viewing.
Yeah.
I
was
was
a bit
actually
of a twist to me.
The opposite, because I was hyper fixated on the mystery and the twist, which was the sort of reveal of the theme that mainly this one kid, was dealing with an identity crisis not knowing, I guess, but that's sort of the twist, is that they're in a gay relationship, these two kids. Whether they know that, whether they don't know that, that's the ultimate understanding of what the twist is, that theme. For me, the second viewing was more viewed from who are we viewing it by. So during the first two perspectives of the teacher and the mother, I was still quite fixated on the kid, where this time around I was focusing more on their storylines, and you can definitely see this greater theme of wanting to understand, but these people that jump to conclusions, which is really funny because the first time I was watching this film, I jumped to the conclusion that this film was about like this gay relationship with these kids, an identity story, but really it's a lot more complex than that. And Kore-eda does actually explore that quite well. And I actually found the way that he presented the elements in each story, how you would kind of, you don't really get the whole thing in each perspective. It actually does start and stop at different points in the timeline, but he does reveal a lot of those elements quite well to naturally flow and at the end bring together a story that is actually quite strong and quite cohesive. So for me, I felt kind of stupid watching it again, going, why was I so fixated on the kids' relationship when I wasn't even realizing that the teacher is actually, he's painted as a bad guy in the perspective of the child and the mother, but he's also suffering as well. He's actually not a terrible bloke. He's actually quite nice, and he's doing everything out of wanting to understand the kid. But he is also jumping to conclusions. So I found that on this viewing, I was a lot more engaged because I wasn't just looking at, because I knew what the twist was. I knew what their relationship is, and I didn't care this time around. I was more fascinated on the story that was being told, and I guess it's a little bit unfortunate that I didn't see that the first time, but once again, this time I didn't care about that side of the story, but I still saw this incredible storytelling through the blocking, which is a funny thing that we don't really get to point out that much on reviews, because you don't really ever see strong blocking or strong layouts of where characters are in an image, but he does it fairly well. I said it in the first review, and I said it again. 20 minutes into this film, there's a fantastic scene in the office of the principal where there are like 6 people in the shot. But what I didn't point out in the initial review is that slowly the camera actually gets closer into them. So they actually start on a fairly wide shot, and they're not kind of squeezed into the shot, but camera slowly pushes in, making you feel more claustrophobic. And then eventually they all stand up, they bow, and it cuts to this low angled shot shooting up at the mother, and it's mostly blocking the majority of the frame except the middle where her face is there, and it still builds that claustrophobic feeling in that scene, and that is just fantastic. I actually paused, rewound, broke it down, and was just fascinated of how he built that anxiety that she was feeling as this outsider in this school world in that scene, and I found it fantastic. And again, it's a masterclass of visual storytelling. It's a masterclass of cinematography, and this time I was a lot happier with where the narrative went and how it was presented.
Yeah. He and Park Chan-wook feel like the standouts when it comes to cinematography presenting in the last couple of years, because I remember Decision to Leave having incredible cinematography as well, and really shining in that aspect. I was a bit frustrated. The biggest gripe that I have with it is with the storyline with the teacher, because I feel like a lot of his stuff is solved by just being honest and open. Like, for example, him hitting him and getting him to bleed out of his nose would be easily explained to say that he was breaking him up and it was an accident. It is not framed that way as an option ever, and I found that a bit more frustrating, that he digs himself in, and it's not like the character has like a theme of there's maybe a self-destructive element to himself. It feels like it's all happening to him, and he's ultimately like a good person. So I didn't really vibe with that storyline as much. I did find Yori's whole path more interesting, the smaller of the two kids, because you basically start with him with like that, with the fire that he pretty much, it's safe to say that he probably set that fire, And all of that underlying hurt that he has from his family, and the drunk dad that's calling him a basically subhuman, non-human with a pig's brain, that bleeds into the insult that a teacher then says to Hori, as to Minato, sorry. And I find that exploration of that the smaller kid, I found that way more intriguing on the second watch, because I was so caught up in what's actually happening with Minato that I wasn't really paying as much attention to Yori. Again, it's the richness of every single character, even the ones that don't get their own separate perspective, that just runs deep in all of his films. I mean, he sometimes has like a cast of like 6 or 7 people in a film, a whole family, and every single one of them feels like they're on a journey. They're not just like a placated, I guess, stereotype. Even the principal in this, which probably gets the least amount here, still has maybe more of a twist in here, where we get a revelation that she didn't take the blame for something that she did, and her husband took the blame for running over the grandkid. But it's those like underlying themes of just like deep hurt that he packs into a story about set in a school, right? And you wouldn't expect a school story to go as deep about like queer identity as a whole, parenting, teaching, and maybe guilt from and death as well, like growing up as a single parent. Like there's a lot in there without like needing to say as much. You can kind of feel it from the characters. And I haven't said this, I said this in our original review as well, that I usually always shit on kid performances, yada yada. Both of them give really strong performances. Both of the kids are really great in this, and it's great to see someone like Sakura Ando, who has been in a lot of projects, is just also was in Shoplifters, right? But she was also in this year's Godzilla -1, so she got that like bigger limelight as well. And hopefully some people who check out that monster will check out this as well, because I do think it really is worth your time. But yeah, Lachlan, anything else you wanted to touch on?
We talked about visual storytelling, we talked about the performances, but one thing that I definitely picked up on this time compared to the first viewing is the lack of a score. There isn't really any music at all.
It's always in between.
It's always in between. It's always when there's a moment happening, there's a particular piano score that plays, which through
I didn't like, to be honest.
It's not the best piano score, but it's also impactful enough to know that when that plays, something important is happening on screen. And it's because your brain then goes, oh, hang on a second, there's a piano score happening. What's going on here? That was
really
super exciting.
Okay. Yeah.
What?
I thought it was always like way more in between. Like I really liked the way that it was implemented in something like
It was a transition music. Yeah.
Yeah, it was transition, and I liked it the way that it was used maybe in something like May December, where it was so in the forefront. But here it always felt like they're using the same sting of like a 6-second clip. To me, the way it was mixed also felt like a lower quality. It really stood out to me. I didn't like the score at all, the minimal score that we got.
But
you liked it.
It does raise a more important point of how well the ambient sound plays an effect in this movie. I think that the rain in the background, the wind, the rushing water from that dam, the horns in the distance right at the end of the teacher's storyline, they all play this really impactful subconscious performance in your head when you're watching this movie, going, this world is alive. You can feel the world is alive. You can feel that. You could almost touch it. You can almost taste it. And I think good ambience is just as important as a good score, especially if your film is not going to have that. I feel like because we're on that Dune 2 hype right now, I'm not 100% confident if they took out the score of Dune 2 that the ambient sound would be as nearly as impactful as it would be in this film.
Yeah.
But what I would say is that that film is completely different. In this film, I don't think a score would work. I honestly don't think that there would be a a version of this film where there's an active score happening throughout, and I think that's just because it then makes you focus on the story at hand and the world that they're building. Not so much a world as in like sci-fi or fantasy, but this little area of this bubble of this story that they're telling. It builds that world that they're telling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really liked it as well. It builds the world a bit more through the characters. And I mean, they're all situated in looking over the city, and it kind of ties it back to, like, you know, that one moment where I guess it's everything, like that hostess bar is burning down. The way they go back to it. But yeah, I like how everything is tied in. It's not, I wouldn't say it's Kore-eda's weakest film. I did watch that one from 2019 called The Truth, where he directs a bunch of French, I guess, French actors, and Ethan Hawke is also in it. It's very disappointing, unfortunately. I think it really wasn't for him. But all of like that kind of dragged down my average rating, because there's another two that I haven't seen. Afterlife. I've seen some people compare this one, some elements from this one to Monster, but I gave Still Walking and Like Father Like Son both a perfect 5-star rating. I think they are even better than Broker, Shoplifters, and Monster. So if anything, go seek out more of his films. I will be doing that the same, and hopefully in I mean, he had Broker and Monster back-to-back years. I don't know if he's working on anything new, but I would be very much looking forward to, if this gun, next gun, another festival, maybe in Venice, he has a new film, I'll be first in line to watch that new Kore-eda film, because yeah, he's just that type of filmmaker for me. Even though I'm gonna land on a 4 out of 5 for this one, though. Lachlan, where do you do it? Lachlan,
you're gonna like this. You're gonna love this, because I went from a 3.5 originally, and I'm moving that up to a 4.
Oh, that's lovely to hear. Yeah, that it added something on your rewatch. Nice to see. If you were to pair it up with another film, what would you choose, though?
So I'm having an absolute mare of a time figuring out what film I want to link it to. The only one that I could think of right now is another monster of some kind.
And that's with Godzilla -1.
Morbius Cam.
No,
Morbius Cam, where I could like link my face together with it. Look at that. Oh, what a transition. I probably just made someone really sick watching that. But multi-timeline storytelling, there's so much I could talk about. There's so many different films I wanted to talk about. But there's one in particular that I'm gonna link to that that you might be like, that's a crazy little attachment. Monsters, a child finding its place in the world, a beautiful story, not multi-timeline, but a beautiful story. It's one of my favorites. It's Where the Wild Things Are.
Oh, yeah. Great coming of age film, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great one, yeah. I'm gonna go with the more literal route of a film that I recommended you even back in Gun, and I think I brought it up during our review, and I realized that you hadn't seen it. Rashomon is on the Criterion channel, and I mean, also you can stream it anywhere. It should be available to rent pretty cheaply, but I think it's worth checking out, because this one, Monster, is more in the direction of showing us these ellipses, right, in between the moments that we are already familiar with. They're not establishing a different perspective. So all that we get is the actual truth. They're not like shifted through the perspective of whoever we are following. There's different movies like The Last Duel that completely are different from the perspectives, right, from Ridley Scott. But in Rashomon is kind of the first one that did that, where every time someone retells a part of the story, it is different, because they are telling it differently, and the way that they remember it, and you kind of piece together the truth from all of the different perspectives that you get. And I think it's groundbreaking in that sense for that sort of storytelling. It also speaks in a larger way to every sort of adaptation that we get of a true events thing, because, you know, when you adapt it, there's always something that is completely different and rearranged, and see that unfold in cinematic form within one story is actually really fascinating. It's one that you probably have to watch like 2 or 3 times to actually fully get. because it is in Japanese, and then it's also like quite a complex, rich story. I'm going to revisit this one sooner than later as well, and I feel like it makes for a perfect pairing after you've kind of warmed up after seeing Monster. But that's it for the double features this week. There's a long list of new releases this week. A lot of stuff on digital that I'll just briefly go over. First of all, I mean, the Oscars did just happen by the time you're seeing this. To Kill a Tiger is out on Netflix, I think, now. Drive Away Dolls comes on to VOD as well this week. We will be talking about that one in all likelihood next week. Origin, Ava DuVernay's latest film, should also be out digitally. There's Sometimes I Think About Dying. I've been trying to hunt that one down since it came out at last year's Sundance Film Festival. It finally is out digitally, so we can catch up with it. There's a documentary on Frida that's out on Prime. Taylor Swift's Era Tour lands on Disney Plus with a couple of extra tracks. The Animal Kingdom, the La Reine d'Animal, which we also caught in Gun. I forget if you also caught it. No, I think you didn't catch it, right? This French film, Santa Regard, that it played with the... Anyways, I caught it. It's pretty fun. It's a French fantasy film with a lot of great, I guess, makeup work. That's out digitally. We got Dream Scenario on Max with the A24 deal. That one's now out for free on streaming. Irish Wish is on Netflix, as well as Chicken Nugget. Two really ridiculous movies. One of them is Lindsay Lohan in a weird rom-com-ish thing. It looks horrible. And the other one's Chicken Nugget, where a person becomes a chicken nugget. And it looks like such an over-the-top weird comedy from, I think, South Korea. I'll definitely be checking that out. Looks super weird. Stop Motion, a horror film that came out, I think, like 1 or 2 years ago, is now finally out on Shudder, I believe. The Gentleman, I forgot to shout that out last week, but that series is out on Netflix now. And then Invincible Season 2, Part 2 starts airing weekly and will wrap its season on April 4th. We will hopefully have a review for that by then. Lastly, Masters of the Air wraps its finale this Friday, so I will be talking about that next week. Then out in theaters, we are getting After the Dog, a dog movie with Mark Wahlberg, based on true events of, I guess, a dog who goes on a long journey. That's for the dog lovers, I guess. Love Lies Bleeding is out in Australia, and in the States it will be out in Switzerland in May, so we'll probably have to wait until we get to review this one, but I'm keen for this. Kristen Stewart, another Sundance film that we get to dive deeper into. One Live with Anthony Hopkins is out, and then we also got The American Society of Magical Black People is what I'll say is out, because I can't say the other word. And that one's out in wide release. I don't see a release date for Australia and Switzerland, and I don't think it will probably get one. But I'm keen to see. I haven't seen any reviews for this one at all, so I'm keen to see if this one lands. It's with Justice Smith. And then in limited release, Ryuichi Sakamoto's Opus is out. Kevin and I caught that back in Venice. It's just like an hour and 40 minutes of Sakamoto playing his most famous, I guess, scores, and it's a very soothing watch. I can recommend it. And then this week out in Swiss theaters, we got Kung Fu Panda 4. I can't recommend that one. And then Radical, another smaller shout out for a story about a teacher. I thought I'd bring that up because it kind of ties into Monster. But that's the long list of stuff that releases this week. Next week, like I said, we're going to talk about Drive Away Dolls, and maybe we're going to take a look at the first Slam Dunk if we can get our hands on it, because apparently it's come out on Blu-ray and 4K in Japan, and we might be able to get our hands on it, but we can't promise anything, but hopefully we'll get to review those things. In the meantime, you can leave us a rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. We'll be back next week with lots to talk about, and Lachlan, any final Oscar predictions now that they've already happened? What do you think is going to be the biggest upset of the night?
The biggest upset is going to be that we only get to hear I'm Just Ken once as a live performance.
That is very sad. Yeah, I feel like hopefully they're not going to change the lyrics to it. like they did last year, I think, with, was it Lizzo or someone came up and they changed the lyrics to the song and it was very cringy. I hope they stay the same with I'm Just Ken. It's simple enough. They should be able to nail this one. All right, we'll see you next week.
Bye.